Hi there and welcome to this review of the Devotionals from One Way UK. And we're covering this time the 20th of September down to the 24th of September. And we began the week on Monday with a very clear statement. And it's something that we can take from what we read in Genesis 49 verse 28, and it's simply this: that each of the brothers received a blessing that was appropriate to him. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that's good news, because you see what it means is that in a world where we're so often put in a competitive environment with other people, at school, at work, it's not necessarily healthy, because we can go around and get bad feelings about ourselves and say, well, we're not as fast as that person, we can't jump as high, we're not as clever. But God doesn't look at us like that. He doesn't look at us competitively. He's not comparing me with you, or you with me, or us with anybody else. What he does is to give a blessing that is appropriate to me, and a blessing that's appropriate to you. And therefore, he will give different blessings to different people as they need. I think that's just great. But let's go on, because on Tuesday we hit upon something else. And that is that we began to look at the whole question of death and of grieving because Jacob died, and we're following through on Joseph's pattern of grief, if you like. And the first thing we spotted on Tuesday was that death is like watching somebody go through airside at an airport. Don't know if you've ever done that, but with children living overseas, I've done that quite a lot. And you stand there and they go through, those sort of square gate things, the metal detectors, and you see them just occasionally as they're putting their baggage through the scanners. And then they'll turn around as they've got through the scanners and give a wave back. And then the crowd sort of merges in front of them, and they're out of our sight, and we don't see them. And yet, of course, we know that they've gone through those gates, and they'll be going to the boarding gate and onto the aeroplane. They have a journey that they're on. And death is very much like that. That as Jacob passed away and Joseph saw him die before him, Jacob just drew up his legs on his bed, stepped back and just died. But he was on a journey. And it's just like standing at that airport gate and watching your friend or family member go through. They go out of your sight. You can't contact them, but in fact, they're on a journey. We went on Wednesday with this great time of national mourning, and it was a national mourning period of 70 days in the case for Jacob. But I just sort of made the comment from my own personal experience that my grandfather died at 92, my stepmother at 100. My own mother died when she was only 52. And I have to say that the grief that I felt was actually no greater from my own mother than from my stepmother. When somebody said to me that my grandfather dying at 92, well, he'd had a good innings, I just said to them, and I remember it vividly, that doesn't make the slightest difference when you love somebody. And I think it's the intensity of our relationship with the deceased that governs the depth and intensity of our grieving. And there's something really good that comes out of this, because you see, nobody has a more intense relationship with you or with me than God. He knows everything about us, absolutely everything. He knows our weaknesses, he knows our strengths, he knows our trials, and he knows our triumphs. And therefore, when we are faced with the grieving process, we can be assured of this, that because of that intensity of relationship that God has with us, that nobody loves or cares more deeply for us than God. We may feel bereft, we may feel something has been torn out from us, but God understands. And if we turn to him, he will comfort us in our grief. And we carried on then. We had a situation where we've got Joseph, as he was in his mourning period, he's wearing his mourning garments, and he asks Pharaoh's advisors to speak to Pharaoh on his behalf. And it's an interesting thing because we just recognise that Joseph in the nation of Egypt, he must have been like a superhero. He had saved them from starvation. He had saved a nation. And yet here he is following through the conventions of not going before the Pharaoh in his mourning clothes, because that was something that wasn't done in those days. And it would have been tempting, I think, for me to have simply swept aside the convention and just to bowl into the Pharaoh, knowing how much the Pharaoh was in my debt, if you like, for solving his issues, his problems over the famine, and just asked what I wanted. In fact, Joseph was far more gracious than that, and he was far wiser than that. Proverbs 12:15 is worth remembering. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he who heeds counsel is wise. Finally, on Friday, what do we have? Well, we have the fact that we see that Joseph was a man of his word. He wanted to carry out what his father had requested concerning taking his body back to the land of Canaan, burying him in the family's burial cave. Not only that, but we see something quite extraordinary. The Pharaoh supported what Joseph wanted to do. That was good. But the Egyptian top officials chose to identify themselves with Joseph in his grief, stand by him, and actually attend the funeral, giving honour to Jacob, his father. Now, what is so extraordinary about that is that we've already discovered that the Egyptians despised the Hebrews. And yet here they are setting their natural, if you like, their natural inclination, their natural prejudices aside and being open-hearted in identifying with the grief that Joseph felt. And it leaves you and I with a question. What is our response to those against whom we are prejudiced for one reason or another? Would we be as open-hearted as the Egyptians were towards Joseph and his brothers? I look forward to you being with me next week as we go daily, Monday to Friday, through the remainder of the story of Joseph. And have a great weekend.